Dear colleagues and friends, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. It's going to be an exciting international event because we have participants from different parts of the world, from Ukraine, from UK, US, from India, Kazakhstan, Poland, from Bulgaria. And today we are going to discuss some important aspects, such as how to target the best journal in times of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we are going to discuss why is it important for every author, researcher to have ORCID ID and Publons profile. And we are going to discuss how to avoid predatory journals and predatory publishers. And we hope that knowledge gained during today's webinar will transform into advanced academic activities for all our participants. And today we will have 4 presentations. The first one is with Dr. Armand Gasparian. He will be talking about how to target the best journal in times of COVID-19 pandemics. The next one is by our regular contributor, Dr. Latika from India. She will be talking about predatory conferences. This item is also very important for scholars. And our final presentation will be by an expert, librarian from Colorado, Jeffrey Beal, who will advise us how to avoid predatory journals and predatory publishers. And it's a big pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Armand Gasparian, who is regular contributor to our webinar series. He is one of the leading British journal editor, clinician, and also expert bibliographic databases. Dr. Armand, please, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Olena. So let me share my screen with all participants.
One moment.
Enable, yeah.
Yes, you can do this now. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So.
This webinar is organized by Danilo Galitsky, Lviv National Medical University and Shevchenko Scientific Society. And I think that we arranged about 15 webinars. This is 16th webinar.
Okay, so Olena, thank you very much for your kind introduction. So we are going to discuss points of interest to authors, researchers, journal editors, particularly journal editors who struggle to index their journals with Scopus, Web of Science, probably Medline. All our participants should be well aware of criteria of all these global reputable bibliographic databases, and they should know how to benefit from comprehensive and systematic searches through Scopus, Web of Science, and PubMed platform. So my talk is entirely about publication ethics and journal profile evaluation. So some of these points were discussed during previous webinars, but today I am going to deliver another important message to our authors who should target good journals, and they should know about they should know how to distinguish good journals, so-called good journals, from substandard, non-indexed, poor quality, or apparently unethical journals. And of course, I'll discuss points of predatory publishing and pay attention to legacy of Jeffrey Beal, who coined the term of predatory open access publishing. So we should know why at all we need to publish articles. You probably are informed that Chinese authorities are now discussing a policy of defending PhD dissertations or graduating PhD studies without publications, because they know that in China there are a number of problems with predatory publishing, with publishing useless, wasteful articles. And instead of wasteful publishing, Chinese authorities are now considering investing more in education of PhD fellows and simply trying to abandon wasteful publishing by PhD fellows. So all academics, all scholars need to publish articles throughout their academic career. So students need to publish articles in youth journals or medical students journals to learn more, to upgrade their scholarly writing skills and to gain experience for future studies. Research studies, PhD studies, doctoral studies. There are some students' journals, particularly journal published by Bohumolets National Medical University. That medical students' journal is one of the exemplary for Eastern Europe, and I think that there will be other medical students' journals published by other Ukrainian and other universities for medical students. Even without indexing, we should accept that one of the important points that journal publishing is for readers, for researchers, not for bibliographic databases, not for indexing purposes. Journal publishing should be a good service to readers. So PhD dissertation require publishing journal articles, particularly articles in quartile 1 and quartile 2, so-called quality journals. We also often target Q1, Q2 journals to publish important data of global importance. So all these top-ranked journals are for leading scientists or for articles of global importance. There are top scientific journals like Science, Nature, Lancet, British Medical Journal, and all these top journals publish Nobel Prize laureates articles. It's quite difficult or almost impossible to publish PhD studies, PhD reports in top scientific journals, because not all PhD dissertations, PhD studies are rocket science, deserve rocket science implications. So we should also publish as scholars articles for continuing professional education or CPD credits. Again, indexing of journals, of target journals, not so important for researchers publishing for credits. In most countries, clinicians publish just to show, to demonstrate their skills, writing and publishing skills, and it's also part of their career. But of course, the best clinicians, those who work for large medical centers or those who work on hot topics, citable topics, they try to publish their articles in specialist journals, top specialist journals, so-called Q1, Q2, or quartile 1, quartile 2 journals. Academic promotion in across Europe, Central Asia also requires publication of different types of articles. Let's say for professor degree in Kazakhstan, it's now mandatory to publish in journals indexed by Web of Science or Science Citation Index Expanded. It's a requirement of their Ministry of Science. Without demonstrating writing skills, without demonstrating academic skills, professors or candidates for professor title cannot continue advancing career in Kazakhstan and probably in many other emerging scientific countries. For almost all researchers, authors, publishing their articles in journals indexed by Scopus, archived by PubMed Central, indexed by Science Citation Index Expanded, now it's now an obligation. Why? Because Scopus is one of the leading bibliographic databases impacting university ranking. In Eastern Europe, in Kazakhstan, all scholars publishing in journals influence also ranking of their universities. So those who publish in the leading or top 2-3 journals like Science, Nature, they also increase rank of their institution and attract a lot of grant funding to their institutions, because most academic institutions apply for institutional grant funding or just funding from pharmaceutical industry, from other sponsors, and all these sponsoring institutions pay attention to where academics or faculty members of universities publish. If they publish in top or highly cited journals, chances of getting funds increase. If a researcher discovered something or worked on a hypothesis and developed that hypothesis to a level of reporting groundbreaking data, groundbreaking research data, these type of articles will go to Nature Science for sure. And again, it's a good service to profession if you publish in Science Nature. I always encourage my research fellows and friends to target Nature, even if they have something small but important for science growth in their countries, in neighboring countries, they may target Nature. If they have something new, if they have something rational based on evidence-based data, they may target Nature. But of course, Nature is primarily for Nobel Prize laureates or those who work on cutting-edge science, and these type of journals are hugely influential, and it's not easy to publish in Nature Science or even in medical journals, top medical journals like Lancet, like British Medical Journal, Journal of American College of Cardiology, Annals of Rheumatic Diseases. These top journals are primarily for clinical trials, large cohort studies, multi-center studies, clinical recommendations of large associations. So authors should know where to publish their research. this knowledge is essential, important to save time and avoid wasting precious time on targeting multiple journals and receiving multiple rejections. So at the start of research, at the start of writing, researchers should know which are the potential target journals. So, and today's participants should also know that there are different types of journals: low rank, medium rank, top rank journals. Even low rank journals may be ethical, may be good targets, regardless of their citation metrics, regardless of their rank in journal citation reports or Scopus-based Scimago journal and country rank. Students also should know that there are medical students journals or journals accepting papers from ongoing researchers, young scientists, and there are also some Scopus index journals that publish students' research, but students' research journals are limited in quantity, and indexability of students' journals is quite difficult, quite limited, because most bibliographic databases try to accept journals making huge influence, influencing citation metrics and impacting science growth. Whereas students' research journals usually help students to learn how to write, how to process scientific information, and indexability of journals for ongoing researchers or medical students not so high compared to other journals. So journals vary in their aims and scope, in their audiences, but the most important point for all journals relates to the main aim of publishing journals. You probably know that first scientific or scholarly journal was launched in 1665, and that first scientific journal was launched to help professionals, society members, to share or disseminate their research reports, research letters, and the main purpose of the initial scientific platform for researchers, scientists, was to share professional information. To this day, journals, scholarly journals, or so-called peer-reviewed journals also have the main aim to share professional information. Information of great importance to society members. So, Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, pay attention to audiences of journal. If a journal applying to these bibliographic databases uncertain about audiences or publishes everything about everything, these type of journals are not so attractive for bibliographic databases. So journal editors, research managers should know that the main aim of publishing journals is to share professional information, to serve good service to professional society, and continuity, and have continuity. So Philosophical Transactions Journal is published to this date. So more than 3 centuries passed since the launch of this journal, but this journal is still active. Journals without agenda, without long-term agenda, will disappear. So if you are going to launch a journal, you should have at least 5-year agenda. You should have platform, you should bear in mind who are your audiences, who will read your journals, and you should also count or quantify or monitor numbers, monitor metrics, who reads, who downloads your articles. I know that in Eastern Europe and particularly in Central Asia, many journals publish articles without monitoring number of downloads, without monitoring who reads, how their articles are discussed on social media. So what over these more than 3 centuries passed since the launch of the first journal, but the main point is to share information. Over these 300 years, platforms of journals changed, and now we have social media supporting information dissemination. So all our journal editors, supported by their authors, should also use social media to disseminate information, and social media editors should be appointed to almost all journals to help disseminate best ethical science. Social media editors should be professionals, medics, other specialists who know the difference between ethical and unethical science, or statistically verifiable, reliable research reports and unreliable research reports. There is no need to disseminate information about all articles. Social media editors should choose the best articles and disseminate that information. So today we publish journals as editors and also as publishers to improve ranking of our universities. Almost 10 years ago, Central Asian and Kazakhstani universities in particular started competing with world universities. And one of the main starting point was to learn how university ranking systems work, particularly QS, World University Ranking, which is quite friendly to emerging science countries, Kazakhstan and Ukraine, other emerging scientific powers. And these World University rankings require, among other things, require Scopus index articles. Universities may improve their ranking, may attract best students by publishing more journals owned by their universities, by encouraging and incentivizing their university faculty members to publish in Scopus index journals. And they should, university research managers should also know that publishing or journal articles, it's not enough. They should also attract citations. So if authors target journals, they should target Scopus index journals that may attract a lot of citations. I know that in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, many journals struggle with improving their ranking with citations. Why? Because they publish articles which are not attractive to American and authors or readers from developed countries. That's the main point, and research managers should know and should encourage their authors to choose the best journals, the best target journals, and increase reputation of their universities. So research managers should also know that the main university ranking systems like Times Higher Education, QS, Shanghai system, they consider Scopus indexed articles. So my message to research managers: to increase reputation of local Ukrainian, Kazakhstani, Polish journals, increase their indexability by Scopus, and attract a lot of citations to their journals ethically, by ethical means. Research managers and authors should also learn how to increase citations and educate their authors how to process citations, how to reference articles, because references of journal articles are now considered as real currency of publishing currency. Your journal reference list, your articles reference lists change profile of your journals. If you continue publishing articles with a lot of non-Anglophone references or poorly visible references without digital object identifiers, indexability of your journals go down. So try to encourage your authors to choose references from Scopus, Web of Science, PubMed, and also other local search engines. We'll discuss local search engines like Open Ukrainian Citation Index, which is one of the best search engines. And I'll convince you to use Open Ukrainian Citation Index. So citations are important, and referencing and citing influences our own academic career, reputation of our universities, and indexability of our journals. Medical students, ongoing researchers, nurses should know, because these scholars, they are also scholars, these scholars often struggle with impact indicators. Researchers should know what's the difference between impact factors issued by journal citation reports, Clarivate Analytics, and impact indicators issued by Scimago and other indexing agencies. Currently, we have only journal citation reports and Scimago Journal and Country Rank issuing or publicizing reliable journal metrics. All other journal metrics are not counted for academic competition, are not counted for journal evaluation. So we, as authors, editors, we should try hard to increase impact indicators visible on Scopus, based on Scopus and Web of Science. And of course, ongoing researchers, young researchers, should know how to monitor their career based on articles. They should know how to use indicator ORCID ID, Publons profile, ResearchGate platform to increase visibility of their articles, and also to attract scholars for cooperation. There are two important systems for journal rankings, and authors who are going to target good journals should understand ranking of their journals based on subject categories. I here present an example from Scimago Journal and Country Rank, based on countries, because Ukrainian researchers often target Polish journals, Polish journals in English, or Kazakhstani researchers often target Russian or journals based in Russia. At least during the past decade, they used to publish in Russian journals. But the situation changed a few months ago after changes of requirements for PhD studies. Now, Kazakhstani researchers, PhD candidates, are required to publish in quartile 1 and quartile 2 journals, which means that they should abandon all non-citable or low-rank Russian journals and try to choose top journals in their field, in their countries of interest. Let's say in Russia, there are few top scientific journals. So Kazakhstani authors may choose these top scientific journals in Russia, but it's tough, it's quite difficult to publish in these journals. So the message to Kazakhstani and Central Asian researchers, editors, is to launch journals that may compete with leading scientific journals, that may become attractive for Scopus, Medline, Web of Science, and may become leading scientific journals. Instead of wasting time targeting foreign journals, Kazakhstani researchers may launch their own journals, increase rank of their own journals, invest in their journals, and invest in science growth in their own country. The same message goes to Ukraine, to Eastern European countries, and researchers basically should know ranking of journals based on SCImago journal and country rank and journal citation reports. So ranking is currently based on scientific prestige of citations. Here you see green icons, quartile 1 journals, Cancer Journal for Clinician published by Wiley. This one is the leading scientific journal with quite impressive journal impact factor, high scientific prestige of citations. These journal articles are cited by Nature articles, Science articles, Lancet articles. So for authors, ordinary authors, it's important to publish articles in local or international journals, attracting citations from top scientific journals. This way, they increase reputation of local journals and ranking, because ranking of journals is based on scientific prestige of citations. If a journal, let's say Kazakhstani, Ukrainian, Polish, or other European journal, publishes numerous articles with low citation, attracting low number of citations, or no citations at all from top scientific journals, ranking of this type of journals is low, and competitiveness is also minimal. So PhD candidates need to publish their articles in quartile 1 or Q1, Q2 journals, and they should know how to increase reputation of their journals by publishing highly citable articles, articles cited by Lancet, Nature, Science, top scientific journals. I know that there is also another problem. Lancet or top scientific journals, Nature, they are quite sensitive or quite selective to references presented by authors. And when they see low rank references or references to local sources, low rank sources, they often ask authors to replace these references by reputable references from rank journals. So that's also not so acceptable, but researchers should, those who cite local sources, low rank sources, they should also justify their referencing behavior. They should explain why specific references, let's say references from Ukrainian journals, Kazakhstani journals, are important. And mechanically replacing local sources by higher rank sources is also unacceptable. So when going to journals in emerging science countries like Ukraine, where we have numerous journals with impressive number of articles, impressive journal citations, we still have, we see that there is still problem with reputation of citations. Ukrainian journals are cited primarily by Ukrainian authors. And this is why scientific prestige or quartile, they struggle to get Q1, Q1, Q2 impact metrics based on scientific prestige of citations. So Ukrainian, Kazakhstani, and other journal editors should understand metrics, and they should try to increase citations from leading scientific journals. This way, they may compete with Q1, Q2 journals and may attract a lot of authors, good authors from countries where PhD candidates are required to publish in Q1, Q2 journals. You see that over the past few years, numerous journals joined Scopus and within 3 years or 4 years acquired CiteScore or other scientific or other impact metrics. But unfortunately, most of these metrics are low. And there are some explanations for that. So journal editors should try hard to increase increase indexability of their journals by directory of open access journals. This is a registry of good journals, so-called whitelist journals. And you know that most journals nowadays, subscription journals, are switching to open access mode, becoming hybrid journals, transformative journals, publishing subscription and open access journals, and gradually most scholarly journals will become open access journals, and most of these journals will be covered by directory of open access journals. In some countries, authors are encouraged to publish in journals covered or listed by directory of open access journals. Initially, DOAJ was launched as a registry, but currently it serves as abstract database or platform acceptable for comprehensive searches as well. Those who are going to write review articles, systematic reviews, may search through directory of open access journals, may retrieve or navigate to open access articles, and enrich their systematic or narrative reviews with articles retrieved from DOAJ. You probably know that in 2014, DOAJ delisted hundreds of journals, poor quality journals from different countries, primarily because of violations of publication ethics. So authors and journal editors alike should know what constitutes violation of publication ethics. And DOAJ is whitelist of journals adhering to all publication ethics standards. Without registering your journal by DOAJ, you cannot go to Scopus, to Web of Science, to other journals, because the same problems with publication ethics will persist. So you should solve publication ethics problems at the stage of DOAJ listing, and then go to the next step, Scopus indexing. DOAJ has a quite friendly platform for systematic searches, and currently it covers more than 16,000 open access journals. Most of these journals are journals without article processing charges. So chances of registering your journal by DOAJ, particularly for journals from Central Asia and Eastern Europe, are high if you have platinum open access model, because most platinum open access journals do not have conflict of interest related to article processing charges. So try to obtain funding from other sources other than authors, from pharmaceutical industry, libraries, donors, individual sponsors, but relying on author fees may be considered as non-sustainable model of supporting your journals. So journals struggling with Scopus indexing, Web of Science indexing, PubMed central archiving may consider obtaining sponsorship for visibility of their journals, archiving purposes, XML convertation. More and more journals require XML convertation. You probably know that most journals are satisfied with PDFs formats, HTML format, and can be considered for indexing by Scopus. But for PubMed Central archiving, for Medline indexing, you need to convert XMLs or textual information to XML files and submit your files to PubMed Central or National Library of Medicine for archiving and Medline indexing. Now, Open Ukrainian Citation Index. Today, I know that some of our participants are aware of this search engine, but you probably shouldn't. You probably do not know that Open Ukrainian Citation Index is one of the most advanced abstracting service integrated with social media aggregator Plum Analytics, and it's the largest platform of scholarly information. So in terms of covering Ukrainian journals, more than 1,500 Ukrainian journals, digitized journals, journals with Crossref membership, or journals with digital object identifiers are visible on Open Ukrainian Citation Index. And this search engine can be used by authors for comprehensive systematic searches, and it may allow them to retrieve local articles, let's say Ukrainian, but not just Ukrainian, many other Eastern European, and Asian American journals are also covered by this comprehensive search engine. And I also hope that today's participants will also use Open Ukrainian Citation Index for searches, for increasing use of their journals. You may simply upload logo of this active logo of this search engine on your journal platform and advise to use this search engine for comprehensive searches. This search engine is one of the most advanced because it is adherent or compliant to open citations or open abstracts in global initiative. So please pay attention to this service. This service is from Ukraine, from Scientific Technical Library based in Kiev, Ukraine, but it is publicized, promoted by Nature. So if Nature journal publicizes information about Open Ukrainian Citation Index, it means that it's something new, something useful for research methodology. So probably you will continue your writing your articles, and we'll see how Open Ukrainian Citation Index will help you to write good articles with comprehensive coverage of literature. Now, here I present good example from Kazakhstan, Central Asia, new startup journal, which is visible on Open Ukrainian Citation Index without any application. So visibility of this journal on your Open Ukrainian Citation Index is automatic. So, but what is important? So journal covered by Crossref, references are properly validated with digital object identifiers, so visible on the internet. And also, this journal is integrated with social media, particularly with Twitter, and Plum Analytics, which is integrated or connected to Open Ukrainian Citation Index, allows to evaluate individual article from this Kazakhstani or Central Asian journal. So this journal is powered by Open Science in Ukraine platform, OJS platform, advanced OJS platform, with a number of digital services. So if journals from Ukraine, Central Asia, and other countries, Poland, Croatia, other countries, European countries, may also refer to Open Science in Ukraine, use the same platform, and increase visibility of their journals. So Open Ukrainian Citation Index is the best example how journal visibility, increased journal visibility helps to increase also improve article evaluation, because currently we use article evaluation based on citations and on social media attention. So authors may also benefit from searches through this platform. And again, the same principle, similar to PubMed platform searches, Scopus searches, or any other bibliographic searches. We simply need to know about keywords for our searches, and we may retrieve relevant information from local journals, Ukrainian journals, or journals which are not covered by Scopus and Web of Science, but still visible by Open Ukrainian Citation Index. So authors may then filter out some of these retrieved articles and cite highly relevant items. The most important principle of work with databases, with platforms, is digitization of a journal and digitization or promotion of individual articles. Here is one of the best examples of journals, best examples for Eastern European, Central European editors who are going to increase visibility and improve digitizations of their journals. Without digitizations, chances of indexing by Scopus are minimal or low. At the same time, authors targeting journals should also understand digitizations of their level of digitizations of their journals, target journals, and target these journals if these target journals are visible on your Open Ukrainian Citation Index, have active digital object identifiers, promoted articles there are chances of promoting their articles on social media, Twitter and Web of Science, etc., etc. Of course, indexing by Web of Science, even emerging sources citation index, is also important. So some startup journals covered by emerging sources citation index, it's a relatively new service of Thomson Reuters or Clarivate Analytics, and it allows to increase visibility. However, emerging sources citation index, journals covered by this database, do not have journal impact factor. For journal editors, going to improve ethical standing of their journals, the following 16 points of ethical publishing are important. So authors who are targeting journals should also know whether their target journal adheres to all 16 points of this statement of principles of transparency and best practice in scholarly publishing. So if you publish a journal, target a journal, you should understand whether the title of that journal is unique, whether the platform of that journal is up to high standard, whether all information about article processing charges, sponsorship of that journal is transparent and based on best practice or based on statements of these leading editorial organizations or associations. Also, they should know about copyrights, uh, archiving, whether the journal is covered by permanent digital libraries like PubMed Central. PubMed Central is a digital library for permanent archiving, but there are also other permanent archive libraries for permanent archiving. So all journals on OJS platform, all journals on other platforms should also be candidates for permanent archiving. Without permanent archiving, uh, your journal articles may disappear from internet, and it's main fault of journal editors. Journal editors should understand how to archive, permanently archive content, published contents, and they should apply to local libraries like Vernadsky Library, like other national libraries, repositories, Polish National Bibliography Database. All these national libraries have certain options for permanent archiving. So Ukrainian and Central Asian journal editors should know where to archive their published contents. And journal editors and authors should know about components of open access. Publishing articles and freely posting on their on journal websites, it's not enough. They also, journal editors or authors themselves, should archive their published articles on PubMed Central, in PubMed Central or elsewhere. Authors may also archive published articles on ResearchGate or other institutional individual libraries if they consider all distribution or licensing regulations. Not all published articles can be uploaded on ResearchGate. So authors should know about Creative Commons licenses and which licenses are the most liberal. Let's say CC BY, Creative Commons license for free, unlimited dissemination and archiving is one of the most liberal licenses, and authors should try their best to publish in journals, allowing them to retain copyrights and to disseminate information about or PDFs of their published articles elsewhere. The best journals, particularly medical journals, also archive their published contents on PubMed Central. PubMed Central increases visibility of articles, and it's a library for permanent archiving. Journals with PubMed Central archiving can be considered as ethical because PubMed Central indexing criteria nowadays are strict, and they accept for archiving only ethical, good journals with evidence-based, with scientifically reliable contents. So authors and journal editors should know about all components of reliable open access. Predatory journals or predatory publishers simply post articles without considering permanent archiving, without helping their authors to increase visibility on PubMed Central. PubMed Central is, of course, quite attractive platform and digital library repository, and it also considered as the best library for permanent archiving, based on definition of open access publishing. This definition is introduced as MESH or medical subject heading keywords in 2016, after quite some time. Bethesda statement on open access publishing in 2003 defined open access publishing as a model allowing authors to retain copyrights of their articles and also archive articles in reliable repositories. So Bethesda definition of open access publishing is considering copyrights and archiving, two main components of quality open access publishing. Predatory journals do not consider these two important points. They publish contents and do not allow their authors to fully retain copyrights, or publish articles without permanent archiving, without repositing articles by PubMed Central. So all current journals, particularly medical journals, should consider copyrights, should allow authors to retain copyrights of their articles, and they should also help their authors or increase chances of indexing their journals by PubMed Central. And for that, of course, they need to know about XML conversion of full texts, because without XML conversion, dissemination of full text is quite difficult. So journal editors should think about that, whereas authors should target PubMed Central archive journals to increase visibility of their published articles. When I search through Scopus, and I hope that most of our participants will also use Scopus searches for their journal, for their reviews, systematic reviews, and other types of articles, and they simply need to know that Scopus is one of the largest bibliographic databases with reliable search engine, with connection to Science Direct digital library, and all these services are products or services of Elsevier publisher. So Scopus is one of the best bibliographic databases for comprehensive and systematic searches. When I search using publishing and predatory as two important logical keywords, I may process more than 1,100 articles tagged with these two logical keywords in their titles, abstracts or keywords. So there are limited number of articles covering predatory open access publishing. I should emphasize that the word predatory not included in the term of unethical publishing. So predatory term, predatory publishing is coined by Jeffrey Bill, but unfortunately not included in MESH vocabulary. This is why I used predatory as a logical keyword. And I know that most articles covering predatory publishing are covered by Nature and other leading scientific journals, such as Journal of Korean Medical Science, journal which is a member of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So Jeffrey Bill is one of the pioneers in the field of open access publishing, and he is a librarian who coined the term predatory open access publishing around 2010. And since that time, most open access journals uh, um, attracted a lot of authors. So they should know about open access. Authors, journal editors should know how to process information and which articles strictly relate to predatory open access publishing. So when we discuss a legacy of Jeffrey Bill, we should recall his platform, open access platform, scholarly open access blog, where he blacklisted all predatory or substandard journals, journals that do not meet certain quality criteria. Unfortunately, this blog is now defunct, not functional, not visible on internet. There are only archived version of these blacklist, and this blacklist became defunct in 2017. But now we know how to distinguish good journals from bad journals, and we again may consult experts like Jeffrey Bill, like librarian, and may choose best targets and may circumvent journals that do not meet strict ethical criteria. So Jeffrey Bill's the best article by this author was published in Nature in 2012. This is highly cited article on predatory open access publishing, informing authors and journal editors how predatory or substandard poor quality open access journals, some of them, corrupt open access publishing. And this article is still highly cited, still commented on social media. So here is that article from Nature. In his one of the first articles on predatory open access publishing, Jeffrey Bill mentioned that scientific literacy by scholars must include the ability to recognize publishing fraud. So scholars should distinguish good journals from bad journals, and good authors should target only good journals. Good journals are also those who allow dissemination of published contents through various platforms, social media channels, and good journals should also have social media editors, and they should disseminate information via Twitter, via Facebook, Telegram, Instagram, and many other social media platforms. Unfortunately, Central Asian and Eastern European scholars still do not use social media for scholarly promotion, scholarly dissemination, and we rely on our webinar participants who will actively use social media for sharing information about their own articles and articles of their professional interest. So a few months ago, I discussed with Jeffrey Bill an opportunity of publishing an opinion piece about predatory open access publishing in the era of COVID-19 pandemic. We discussed a lot with him this problem. We started our discussion in 2015 when I met him in person. And since then, the situation is more or less the same. Predatory open access publishers and standalone journals continue to exist, and they pollute scientific information platforms, scientific platforms, and journal editors who unethically publish articles or charge their authors without offering quality services may be also considered as predators. So I quote Jeffrey Bill, and I refer to his recently published article in Central Asian Journal of Medical Hypothesis and Ethics. And this is startup journal, non-index journal, but as you can see, Jeffrey Bill published in this journal, and he wrote, I believe that journal like this one may be seen as a defense or shield against predatory publishers and corporate open access journals. This journal comprises a small number of followers or researchers, yet accept no money from its authors, freeing itself from practices, temptations, and stigma of predatory journals. Jeffrey Bill considered author pay system as a conflict between primary interest of publishers, service to professional communities, and their secondary interest, obtaining a lot of money. So journals who publish a lot merely to make that service profitable, they commit unethical act, and they may be considered as predatory publishers. So he also mentioned that these particular journals specific focus on medicine, not to other disciplines, important, and certain geography, Central Asia, also important. Journals that publish a lot, or mega journals, giga journals, publish a lot indiscriminately, without paying attention to subject category, subject array, without paying attention to geography. Let's say now we have many global, European, American, world journals or international journals accepting papers for certain fees from all over the world, but without paying attention to who reads their articles, whether that journal is good service to certain geographies. So a message to startup journal editors or journal editors who are going to index who are going to apply to Scopus, Web of Science, and other bibliographic services. They should a certain field of interest in their journals, aims and scopes, aims and scope, and they should also know about readers of their journals, specific expected audiences of or readership of their journals, to meet ethical standards of indexing databases. The same refers to authors. If you publish everything, a lot of articles about everything without paying attention to certain professional scope of interest, you also commit unethical act, because you are not professional. Let's say you are medic, but you publish in business, in economy, in technical fields. You are not professional in all these fields. You have certain professional interests, and your articles, let's say medical articles, are of specific interest to certain readers. So this is why you should carefully choose target journal and publish in journal with specific professional and geographic interests. And you should also know that there are some platinum open access journals publishing your articles without fees and offering good services. Good services means PubMed Central Archiving, Medline Archive indexing, Scopus indexing. If your article is visible on Scopus, it's good service to you. But it would be better if you publish in journal covered by Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, and archived by PubMed Central. And of course, there are also specialist databases. Most journal editors are nowadays obsessed with Scopus, Web of Science, and they abandon specialist databases like Global Health, like PsycInfo, like Chemical Abstract. So specialist databases also have their own place. Journal editors and authors alike should know where they publish. Now, about Jeffrey Bill's blacklist. So, of course, his blacklist is defunct, non-functional, but you as scholars should know about principles of blacklisting journals and standalone journals and publishers. So he divided all, he distinguished predatory publishers, standalone journals, misleading companies, and hijacked journals. And he listed all these categories separately. Of course, he tracked or monitored all these categories by from 2011 until 2017. And as you can see, the number of publishers, predatory open access publishers, increased enormously over these years. Of course, after closing his blacklist in 2017, the situation remained the same, more or less. Of course, awareness of predatory publishing increased. Authors are nowadays more selective towards target journals. Experts are more careful when they respond to reviewer invitations or invitations to join editorial boards. So the situation slightly increased, but awareness in some countries, particularly in Central Asia, in Eastern Europe, still not satisfactory. We as scholars should increase awareness of Jeffrey Bill's legacy and should warn journal editors to act ethically and avoid preying on naive, inexperienced authors. Nowadays, there are still numerous misleading metrics, and even good journals still list their journals on these platforms. So please try to avoid using global impact factor, general impact factor, or impact factors generated by commercial indexing services. Scopus, Web of Science, and other indexing services are reputable, prestigious, ethical, so you can use only their issued metrics, and you can display their metrics on your journal platforms. So I know about SiteFactor, and this SiteFactor agency is still listed on some Ukrainian journals, so journal editors should avoid using dodgy or bogus impact metrics from SiteFactor, Global Impact Factor, SIS Impact Service. They should also recall several important predatory publishers. So some of these publishers are exemplary. Initially, they were classified as predatory. Here is an example of predatory journal, which was initially indexed by Scopus, but then delisted. You see, they mentioned impact factor 6 point something, but this journal wasn't covered by Web of Science, and impact factor term is a term of Clarivate Analytics or journal citation reports. There are many agencies issuing impact factors, commercial editing and impact issuing services, but their impact metrics are not reliable. So authors should also know about that. Sometimes also journal editors intentionally display index Copernicus value as impact factor matrix. Index Copernicus value was criticized by Jeffrey Bill, and the whole service, Index Copernicus service, was also harshly criticized because of non-transparency of impact calculation by that service. So transparency and reliance on hard currency like citations, like alternative metrics, should become cornerstones of impact evaluation. An example of hijacked journals. You probably know that this journal, Therapeutic Archives, was traditionally one of the best target journals for Soviet scholars in former Soviet republics in Eastern Europe, Central Asia. But using that information, hackers hacked that journal and opened new platform, paid platform, attracted a lot of naive authors who published their articles in non-existent hijacked journals. So try to avoid all these hijacked journals. Be very careful when you choose target journals, and target only journals with reliable platforms, with platforms which are easy to distinguish from predatory platforms. Jeffrey Bill blacklisted journals based on titles. There are still many journals with titles that include words world, European, American. It's better to publish in journals like Ukrainian, Kazakhstani, Polish, or other journals with local geographic term, instead of relying, or instead of publishing in World Journal of something or American Journal of something, particularly if it is startup journal or journal which is not covered by reliable databases. Here you also can see buzz terms. OncoTarget, it's a journal. Initially it was indexed by Web of Science, Medline, but it lost its indexing status because of predatory publishing practices, because of charging their authors and publishing a lot abundantly without paying attention to peer review, to quality standards, and being interested merely in charging their authors. So if your publisher charges you, you should ask whether there will be also services. Initially, Jeffrey Bill even blacklisted by Shideng Publishing Group. It's a Chinese group, and there are many publishers from China, from Iran, from Pakistan, which are blacklisted by Jeffrey Bill. And still, we know these journals or publishers are still publishing unethical articles, articles with poor visibility, without PubMed Central archiving. So most of these journals or publishers, even after being blacklisted, still continue their existence. Now, about the role of chief editors and editorial board members. Jeffrey Bill initially blacklisted journals with poor or editorial boards without editorial credentials, or editorial board members without involvement in editorial practices. There are still many editorial board members simply being listed without functioning. So in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, there are many journals with editorial board members, big names, without any involvement, without any activities in their journals. That's also considered as predatory. So if you are going to improve editorial standards in your journals. You should, journal editors, research managers should involve members who are actively going to contribute to their journals, who understand what is published. Let's say if you invite English speaking author expert to join your editorial board, that expert should be familiar with language. If it is Ukrainian language, so your expert should understand Ukrainian language. Inviting American specialists or Japanese specialists who are not aware, who are not good at Ukrainian, it's not good and it's bad for profile of your journal. So he also criticized most open access journals where chief editors are listed without functioning as chief editors. So editors without editorial credentials. So you should also change that practice. There are now numerous academic journals in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, or post-communist countries where journal editors are listed merely because they are doctors of science, academicians, but they do not act as responsible editors. They do not process articles. So this type of practice should be changed. There are a number of predatory offers from predatory publishers. Always discard these type of invitations to publish, to join their editorial boards, to review articles. If you review for journals, pay attention whether that target journal is indexed by Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, PubMed Central, whether that journal adheres to best ethical standards. Pay attention to journal titles. If a title reminiscent of a title of index journal, so repeats and somehow changed, so you should suspect that that journal is also predatory. Or there are journals like Standard Global Journal of Islamic Education. There cannot be Global Journal of Islamic Education. Or Standard Global, what does it mean? Are there non-standard or substandard journal? Of course not. So these nonsense journals are predatory, and you see that all these indexing services paying attention and covering these journals are also predatory. Side factor, journal index, universal impact factor, and others also considered as predatory indexing services. Now, titles like this one, covering medicine, health sciences, pharmaceutical science, too broad scope of activities. It's merely aimed to attract a lot of articles and charge authors. It's also considered as predatory. So avoid these type of journals. It's better to target in local journals with narrow scope of interests. Let's say Journal of Ukrainian something, Journal of Oncology and Radiology in Ukraine, or Journal of Pediatrics in Ukraine. There are not just scholarly predatory open access journals and publishers, but also authors behaving as predators. Authors who published a lot and publishing irrational articles, publishing just to increase, to boost their profile on PubMed platform. Try to publish limited number of articles, limited number of good articles, and avoid putting your name wherever possible. So just to increase number of articles. And avoid all these nonsense certificates, nonsense or useless memberships in journal editorial boards. If you are a specialist in cardiology, join cardiology journal, not to toxicology, not to a business and management journal. So have specific scope of interest. Immunology, only immunology. There are a number of predatory invitations from omics groups, from predatory publishers. Of course, during pandemics, these invitations decreased. However, there are still invitations to attend conferences, electronic conferences, or webinars in US, in Western countries, developed countries. There is no need to arrange American or British or Japanese webinar or German webinar. You simply may attend local Ukrainian webinar and increase your profile by by going to local university or local country, city, small webinars. Predatory conferences or electronic conferences usually invite you to attend conferences in US, in large countries, Canada, etc. Factors influencing journal publishing. In 1992, criteria for targeting journals were different. Most authors published in journals with large number of high circulation number. Nowadays, circulation or print publishing not so important. Nowadays, we pay more attention to impact metrics, to social media, to relevance to our professional interests. There was a survey of 1,000 scholars in 2013, and these scholars proved that relevance of journal to their professional interests, impact metrics, indexation, coverage by Medline, Scopus, Web of Science is important as criteria for targeting journals. You should also pay attention to these criteria. We arranged small survey thanks to Latika Gupta, Olena Zimba, and other scholars who supported us. And we arranged small survey within 1 week and covered gauged interest of respondents from mainly from India, Ukraine, Turkey, Kazakhstan, so emerging scientific powers. And we discovered that 5% of our respondents published in predatory journals. Of course, most of our respondents are fluent, good researchers, good scholars, but 5% are still unsure where to publish. They need to know about predatory open access publishing. We also discovered that there are also currently new criteria of targeting journals. PubMed Central Archiving, scientific prestige of target journal, quality of individual published journals. So Ukrainian editors may also separately display some exemplary good articles to attract good authors, or so-called editor choice articles, good articles publicized, promoted on social media to attract good authors. There are many other criteria of good target journals. Now about bad target journals. Life Science Journal, who still, this is a predatory publisher, predatory journal based in China, who still publishes a lot of articles without indexing, but they simply mislead their authors, claiming that their journal covered by Scopus had having impact in metrics from Thomson Reuters or Index Copernicus, non-existing metrics or non-reliable metrics. This journal is covered by Scopus, and we see that these journal authors are mainly from Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, China, unfortunately, because of poor awareness of publication standards. So Authors should be aware of publishing standards to avoid to circumvent predatory publishers. Another predatory journal from India. This journal was covered initially by Scopus, Thomson Reuters, but main authors were from Eastern Europe, Central Asia. This journal was delisted because they violated publication ethics standards. Another impact factor journal, Asian Pacific Journal of Cancer Prevention. This journal lost its impact factor in 2016 because of violation of publication ethics norms, because of increasing number of articles 10 times without increasing quality of peer review, publishing everything, particularly from Iran, from Central Asia, from non-Anglophone countries, and this journal damaged its scientific reputation. It initially reached its peak publication activity, close to 2,000 annual article count, but the number decreased because they lost their impact factor. This journal is still covered by Scopus, however, not covered by Science Citation Index Expanded. Another journal, OncoTarget, which lost its impact factor, it was high enough for this journal, Oncology Journal, 6 point something from Journal Citation Reports, but it increased its number of articles many times and decreased quality of these articles. So based on publication concerns, Web of Science delisted this journal. Many journal services are available, and I hope that you also have quality services in your countries. Some of these quality services are membering Committee on Publication Ethics or other ethical editorial agencies. Journals membering editorial agencies or adhering to their recommendations are good journals. So I analyzed some of these editorial associations and still consider World Association of Medical Editors, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, Committee on Publication Ethics as reliable editorial associations. There are also many local agencies, local editorial organizations like newly launched Ukrainian Council of Science Editors, and this editorial association will serve interest of local authors, editors, information facilitators, or all those who are seeking information about ethical standards, editorial guidance, journal development guidance. Hopefully, you will also join this association to improve quality, indexability, and scientific prestige of your local Eastern European, Central Asian journals. Authors also need to know about global initiative called Think, Check, Submit. Why you need to publish, check indexing platform, and submit if you're sure that your articles will be widely visible. You should also know. Yes,
dear Armand, sorry for interrupting you. We have message from Latika because she have to go to other meeting.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm finishing. So point about
I think you can continue, and maybe I take mine next time when we have Wheel in person, because anyways, we've covered some of that and we'll brush up on more next time. Does that work?
Latika, I am finishing just a couple of slides.
Latika, you can join us with your presentation. Yes, 1 minute.
Okay.
So predatory publishing services are wide in scope and activities. We should also know about Ukraine, and we should know also about Ukrainian authors who abundantly publish in some journals. Some of these journals are not covered by Medline, and simply these journals damage reputation of their authors. Some of these journals are abundantly targeted by Ukrainian authors. Of course, most of these journals charge publication fees. Not all publications fees are transparent. We should encourage our authors to rely on best examples coming from PLOS library, best open journals, even if they charge a lot. And they should also know, authors should know about ORCID ID, pub loans, why these platforms are important, and they should also know about Sarajevo Declaration. And finally, they should know also about Ukrainian journals covered by Open Science in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. So hopefully we'll have Q&A discussion later.
Dear Armand, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. You shared with us really useful and relevant information.
Olena, just a few seconds. Thank you, and sorry for taking your time, particularly Latika's time. I simply wanted to finish my talk and allow, because we have some problems today with our speakers. Latika, now it's your turn. There is no need to introduce Latika. We all know Latika as one of the leading Indian journal editors, rising star in rheumatology, English-speaking author, reviewer, journal editors, and I am sure Ukrainian Council of Science Editors, Shevchenko Scientific Society, and all other supporting organizations will benefit a lot from talk of Latika Gupta. Stage is yours, Latika.
Dear Dr. Gasparian, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and truly honored as usual to be part of this. And unfortunately, a little bit of my topic was predated upon today, so maybe we'll just brush through facts once again. And I'm also really excited to have Jeffrey Beal, who's a pioneer in the field. So when I was allotted this talk, I wondered what really brought us to this. How did we get to predatory publishing and these kind of problems? We realized that maybe the remodeled societal and occupational structure, including publication pressures on academics, has led us to this changing paradigm where publish or perish is the mantra of success. So oftentimes young researchers end up in an endless chase where greed begets greed, and in an effort to try and touch the horizon, they may resort to unethical publishing practices. So it is important that whenever you're viewing a publisher's profile or any kind of profile of a young and prolific researcher, an established prolific scholar who has way too many publications, you need to view them through the prism of ethical authorship violation. So publishing in predatory journals can be an easy tactic for lousy authors, although the other side of it could also be that naive authors fall prey to them. And to introduce you to this concept, I would probably best give you this example of a case report which we published way back, I think in 2016. Just happened to discuss this very interesting case of vasculitis, large vessel vasculitis. The patient presented with pyrexia of unknown origin and nothing else. And in the pre-pulseless state, so all the pulses were preserved, and a PET scan we found that the vessels were inflamed. And late Professor Paul Bacon was visiting us from the UK, and he said that maybe we should report this case. It's very interesting. The fact that this patient also turned out to be refractory to various treatments is another long story, but Professor Paul Bacon suggested that he had recently received this invitation from Annals of Case Reports, which was probably from the Annals Publishing Group, and given his expertise in the field, he is also invited to be an editorial board member, and maybe we should target this journal. And they requested to submit a manuscript for the inaugural issue. before January 15, 2017. So the first red flag came on when he said the author instructions are remarkably minimal, which is not something we'd expect from a reputed journal, and they're available online, but as we were having a problem, it copied them. And the next was the surprise, $1800 US being requested for this publication, which was swiftly accepted, as one would expect. So we wrote to them that we do not want to publish, and nowhere was it mentioned on the website that this journal charges for publication. But despite repeated requests, there was nothing much to be done, and it was published despite our request to withdraw the publication. And interestingly, the check payment had to be directed to Remedy Publications, like as if it was a remedy to all maladies. So this is a typical example of a predatory publishing group and a predatory journal. Typically, they may solicit manuscripts through email. Oftentimes, they ensure speedy publication, which is not the case here. But description of manuscript handling can be unfair. And it can be difficult for young researchers sometimes, because with the peer review, revisions, rejections, they're bound to feel disheartened, and publishing in credible journals may seem like a competitive and arduous task, particularly for people who are not native English speakers, because language becomes an additional issue. And predatory journals, we give you a red carpet welcome and greeting, saying that we adore your research. But one should be mindful of avoiding such things. Sometimes you're caught in the unending trap where they would even charge you for withdrawing, and you cannot submit your great manuscript to another journal, because it would amount to duplicated publication. So you may end up with a retraction if you do that. So you may be left with no option but to pay a withdrawal fee to a predatory publisher. So it's something really grievous and of major concern. And these are the red flags to look out for when you're thinking of predatory journals. They usually do not have Web of Science impact factors or SciMango journal rankings. So none of the credible journal rankings would be associated with these. They have unprofessional websites. The links may be dead. They may have grammatic errors. One typical thing we see these are blingy websites with the WhatsApp icon, which is shining. That is the most useful and most obvious sign most of the time. And then they use generic email accounts, like there may be Gmail or Yahoo for correspondence. There will be no adequate headquarter location, or the headquarter locations may be fake and false. So they do not have a clear policy in copyright licensing. They wouldn't tell you the copyright lies with you or with the publisher. They are almost always open access because that's what they charge for, apparently. And there'll be no clear policy on retraction. So nothing related to ethics would be out there. And they would charge unusually high or unusually low APC, and usually like figure out other reasons to charge you again. And they do not improperly use permanent identifiers like a DOI or ISSN, maybe missing or maybe improper. And oftentimes, if you are into publishing, you would be really bogged down by the number of fake requests. And so was the case with these Polish authors and researchers who thought that probably they should conduct a sting operation to understand how these journals operate. And they found that there are massive problems with these journals, not only at the publisher level, but also at reviewer and editor level. So what they did was pretty interesting. They created this Anna Oszust, which is a fake, a fictitious scientist, where Oszust in Polish means fraud. So this Dr. Fraud's profile, a sham profile, was created, and they applied to nearly 360 journals to be the editor-in-chief. And nearly 48 of these accepted, of which around 4 of them did so instantly. So let's look at Dr. Anna Oszust. This scientist had fake scientific degrees, had published proof book chapters. The academic interests were theory of science and sport, and cognitive sciences, and methodological basis of social sciences. So as we can see, it's all the intersection areas, and none of them relate with each other at all. So all gray areas and all disparate ones. And then there were profiles on academia.edu, Google+, and Twitter. But the faculty page at the Institute of Philosophy, which again has nothing to do with the previous interest, was at the Adam McKee's University in Poznan, but the page could only be accessed through the link in our CV and nowhere else. And the profile was dismally inadequate for role as an editor because there were no publications, no citations ever, had never functioned as a reviewer on any of the reputed journals. So these are the signs of a fake editor or a fake reviewer. There will be no publications, never been a reviewer, never cited. The books and chapters will not be searchable on any reputed engine. So let us have a look at who embraced the fake. So Soust had applied to 360 different journals, of which 48 accepted. And if you look at the list by Mr. Jeffrey Beal, then nearly 33% of the acceptance was from journals listed there. And another few percent accepted, but later disputed when it was maybe disclosed that this is a fake profile. Interestingly, DOAJ also, there were 7% titles on DOAJ, which did embrace the fake, although things might be changing now with more stringent guidelines and everything is more stringent these days. But the Journal of Citation reports came out clean, and it was a whitelist which calculates impact factors, and none of the journals listed there accepted Soust as the editor-in-chief. So lends great credibility. This study published in Nature. So it is interesting to know that some of these accepted Soust as the editor-in-chief within hours, and 4 immediately appointed her as the editor right away. So maybe in the future, these journals need to be highlighted, and universities should stop using them as a quality of published articles. Should not be a measure of academic performance, and researchers and respective journals should also avoid citing from predatory journals. So Jeffrey Beal had clearly pointed out that these predatory journals often fail to properly manage peer review, allowing pseudoscience to be published, which is dressed up as authentic science. And academic evaluation is affected, and young researchers are at risk of being victimized by these. So the problem with these journals is multi-pronged. There is sometimes, there are events of advocacy research. So this type of research supports a particular political, religious, or social agenda. And these will be of questionable science, but these will largely be to promote a mob mentality. And these would not have survived peer review, but just because this is a predatory journal. So there may be like more, a greater and darker agenda underneath than we can see. And there is great room for misinformation, something which has really been prominent in the times of the current pandemic. In fact, we conducted a survey recently and asked researchers which platforms do they resort to for information on COVID, and where do they find misinformation. As we see, while television stood out in terms of delivering misinformation, but there were a sizable proportion of misinformation, did come out from digital libraries, publisher repositories, information aggregators, and these are likely to carry published articles, research articles, and these may largely be either preprints or predatory journals. So there is room for misinformation, and another major concern is pseudoscience. So, for example, if you've read articles from Cosmology where there's a room for various open and unanswered questions, some researchers have used the easy publishing process that predatory publishers offer to answer these questions, or they try to correct Einstein or Newton. So their articles tend to be written in a way that is difficult to prove or disprove them. And they tend to garner support from people who have a tendency to latch on to pseudoscience. And papers denying climate change, there are plenty of them doing the rounds, or anthropogenic nature of climate change. These are also commonly published in predatory journals. And this is another major concern with this kind of publishing. So these typically capitalize on human emotions. So for example, today you, with a lot of love, you submitted your manuscript, and a lot of hard work went in, and you're hoping to get it published, but you got a rejection email, and obviously feeling very dejected. It's your PhD thesis, years of hard work, and you really wanted to see it accepted in a reputed journal. And that very moment, you get an email that I'm Ms. Hazel, managing editor of Rouse Medical Science. We're gathering eminent and skilled persons, and we want to invite you for your valuable article submission. This is something which is likely to get you in that moment. And before you know, you'll be hitting the submit button, and may, of course, regret it later, but this is something you need to be aware of to avoid falling prey to these. So as Dr. Gasparian highlighted, we did ask people how things changed during the COVID pandemic. And this was a survey conducted primarily among rheumatologists and other specialists. And most of the respondents, that is 84%, were aware of predatory journals, although 5% had previously published. So they did accept that they'd previously published in predatory journals, while another 19% were unsure, which is of great concern. And then the respondents pointed to certain features of predatory journals. So as we can see, not all of them were aware of all the features. So there is clearly room for misinformation here, and we need to clear researcher concepts before they embark on publishing. And also people thought that pseudoscientific articles may gain visibility by preprint archiving, which is again something not similar, but maybe in the lines of predatory publishing, because it's the only common thing being it doesn't undergo peer review. So this was of major concern among young authors who publish, and the problem runs deeper than we can expect. Sometimes it's hard to detect these kind of fake invitations because there may be instances of hijacked journals where respected journals, usually with an impact factor from Thomson Reuters, from which someone has created a counterfeit website, and these then send spam emails. So, and they may act like the real publishers of the journal, which can be very tricky to identify. So that's why we need whitelists like the OAJ, which Dr. Armand talked about at length. And then there is the OASDA. We have the COPE publishing agency, and an INASP for Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Central America, and Mongolia. And then the African journals online. But blacklists are more important than whitelists, and Mr. Beal did tell us that. So as you know, he needs no introduction. Is an American librarian who's best known for drawing attention to predatory open access publishing. This term was in fact coined by him, and now the famous Beal's list was a list of potentially predatory open access publishers. So he said that the gold model and the platinum model were particularly prone to abuse, and his criteria for inclusion may be same editorial board for more than one journal, no geographic diversity among the editorial board members, no practices for digital preservation, that is, the website may just disappear overnight, or the publisher copy proofs or locks their PDFs. So it is very hard to check for plagiarism. Also, the name of a journal may be incongruent with the journal's mission, like the one we talked about, the fake editor, the interest. Sometimes you have journals like that, or false indexing claims. So after the Beal's list was targeted, it was because of various giants in the field feeling blacklisted and dishonored. So these were, he was sued by the Omics Group in Hyderabad, and they cited reasons like poor transparency, difficult to get the list off the list once there. And the final blow was when Frontiers was added to the list. People viewed this as an assault to gold open access, which may be ethical at times. So, however, all is well that ends well, and Mr. Beal was hired by Cabell, and now we have the Cabell's list, which is a popular journal blacklist, which analyzes over 60 behavioral indicators. It is much more elaborate, and it is reviewed quarterly, and the list is renewed. The only downside being paid access to both black and white lists. But there are other lists which can guide young researchers, like the Indian UGC and CSIR, or top predatory journals. India, in fact, top submission in predatory journals, as per this research conducted in 2017. And UGC Grant Commission was forced to release a list of recommended journals to counter predators. So identifying a predatory journal, there are various factors, like a subject covers various interfaces, like medical alongside non-biological, biomedical, and editorial board members are either not traceable or they are unrelated to the field. Spelling errors in the website is a major red flag, and easy to identify, or fuzzy or distorted images, which may be rigged from somewhere or unauthorized. Then targeting language, as if they're trying to lure you into something. It's fairly obvious again, and index Copernicus value, if that is, you see a blinky sign or something blinking out there, it's usually used as a professional tool website and gives you an immediate hint to just let go of this one. And retraction policy may be missing, contact email, maybe Gmail, Yahoo, or anything else, but not an enterprise one. And a good way to avoid predatory conferences and journals, find only the non-profit scholarly societies in your field, like the Ukrainian society, you know, Shwenko society, or whatever is the local national society for that particular speciality, and attend only conferences or invitations from these scholarly organizations. So to guide young researchers, there exists the Think, Check, Submit checklist, where there are several questions which may guide you to the true authenticity of this invitation, like how long has the journal been in existence, how extensive is the available archive of back issues, and examine the quality of research published. Also, can you contact the publisher? So sometimes the peer review process is not listed well, and that's a red flag, or the journal is not indexed in any of the major academic databases, some of which Dr. Armand talked about at length. Also, it's easy if you ask your colleagues if they're published or are familiar with the publication. So scholarly databases, maybe Scopus and Thomson Reuters, Web of Science, need to raise the bar of acceptance and eliminate journals and publishers that use flawed peer review practices. So we need more stringent action by larger governing agencies like the US National Center of Biotechnology Information for PubMed and PubMed Central, because there's several gray areas and several predatory journals which have made to PubMed Central, and this can be an important incentive for young researchers to publish in these journals. So while we think that we've had enough on this topic, we realize that there's much more, like this invitation which I got around 2 years ago from the World Congress of Immunology, and I bet many of you have witnessed something like this at times, where you're invited to be a speaker, sometimes in the right field as well, immunology here, and then 40% discount in your registration, which is interesting for an invited invitation. There's a discount on registration. There's several red flags, like the send and notified by mail track, which typically doesn't happen for invitations otherwise. And if you see the theme is rather, you know, just vague, scrutinizing recent advancements in the field of immunology. Sometimes it's worse than this. This one is still okay. Technology, innovation in immunology and vaccine. At London, UK, you see L from London is small, which may be counted as a grammatical error, which is a red flag. You look at the Gmail over here, which is another red flag. Then this is the 8th World Congress, and if you search, there's no 7th World Congress. So this is clearly predatory. And when we click on the link, then you see that the website is under construction. So then a sneak peek into, that was the the link to the previous Congress, and a sneak peek into the conference website. The 8th one, you see that there is a lot of fanfare and display of how much time you can lose before it starts. There is the Pulses group, which is a known predatory group, and then leave a message. It's rather blingy. And if we look at the boasted speakers, the highly valued speakers, Dr. Stephen Todd Osterhout, founder and director of Vitality Healthcare, Integrative Medical and Natural Healing Center. So again, we are seeing the intersection of two sciences. So this person is residing clearly in some gray area, and if we search him on Google, then it's astounding that this person is the only web page which links to him is his Facebook page or the conference link. He's an academic apparently, but there's nothing else on the internet. And he happens to be a chiropractor, which has nothing to do with the immunology conference. Now, time to look at Professor Ignatov, who's a Bulgarian scientist involved in research projects for the study of biophysical and medical effects in the application of methodics for the influencing of human health. So already as convoluted as it can get. And from 2007, he is an honorable director in natural sciences, which is again different from his primary area. And if we search Dr. Alliteration, the only credible links route to the conference website and YouTube links to his own channel. So again, really fishy here, and his CV, it lists 2 different journals, Journal of Medicine and Physiology and Biophysics. Now let's get deeper into this one. The Journal of Physical Chemistry and Biophysics. You can see a blingy WhatsApp icon here, which is again a red flag. And it is studying applied physics, astrophysics, and physical chemistry. It has an ISSN number, and it has various links on social media platforms. If we dig deeper, then we see that the editorial board has Dr. Alliteration along with various others. And this is the submission email. If we look at the other journal, which he was on the edit board of, you would be surprised to see that the editorial board is entirely replicative of the first one. So this is clearly a network, and this is a red flag according to the Beals list. This is exactly something you should watch out for. And going on to this other red flag, you can register and be a speaker, which would definitely sound the death knell for this conference and your acceptance. So for conferences, we have the think, check, and attend checklist, where you may, the most important questions you may ask is this the first time this conference is being held? Or have you or your colleagues attended this conference before? Also, have you read any papers from this conference proceedings before? So usually conferences archive the abstracts presented, and they will be published in a reputed journal. So that may be an important indicator if they're not published anywhere, the proceedings and the previous archives are not visible. Also, do the scope and objectives of the conference fit your field? Is it related to your core interest? And does the conference make it clear which indexing services it can guarantee, and to which indexers it will submit the proceedings for evaluation? So there's much more on this topic, and Dr. Armand covered some tidbits as well, very much in depth. And for further reading, I'd recommend this article, and happy to take questions.
Dear Latika, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. Very useful information, eye-catching presentation. Thank you very much.
Bravo.
Armand, would you like to add something to Latika's presentation? Where are you?
I'm struggling to open my video.
Yes, you can open your video. Yes,
okay.
We can see you.
So, Latika, thank you very much. I understand that situation is worsening in India, and our speakers also suffer because of pandemic, because of rolling out of vaccines. So, and high number of ICQ patients. Yeah, but we should carry on somehow, and we should survive ourselves, should pay attention to science, ethical publications, and we should also invest in our own journals, like Indian Journal of Rheumatology. Initially, that journal was also targeted by predatory authors, predatory agencies, and now it's cleaned up. And it's ethical journal because of involvement of several experts like Olena Zimba, like Latika Gupta, Durga Misra. So hopefully journals like Indian Journal of Rheumatology, journals like many other local journals will be better off and will have more chances of getting their impact factor. Your talk was quite informative, and I learned a lot. Though I know a lot about predatory publishing and predatory agencies, I know that some journals are based in India, in Hyderabad, and our non-Anglophone authors should also know about publishers transformed, listed by Jeffrey Beall and transformed, and still preying on non-Anglophone authors. So what's your comment on that? How non-Anglophone authors may avoid being authors or being targeted by predatory agencies in India?
So I guess follow the same dictum, identify these red flags. They're there on all those websites. Always be cautious. And of course, when in doubt, I always ask experts in the field. So I asked Dr. Armand, I asked Dr. Durga. It's always useful to ask your colleagues who published a lot if this looks predatory, and they can usually tell at the drop of a pen, you know, that, oh yeah, this is predatory, because sometimes you're feeling flattered by those emails, and they would see through that. So it's important to ask your colleagues.
Okay, increasing awareness of authors. So you mentioned also that there are some good gold open access publishers, presumably PLOS ONE and others, but you're probably also aware that initially Jeffrey Beall blacklisted Chinese publisher, MDPI publisher, and now these publishers are whitelisted, cleaned.
Frontiers as well,
Cleaned.
yeah.
Frontiers, yeah. But, you know, the problem is with payment. If you have high publication fees, there is a conflict. You often, journal editors, will be tempted to accept more and pay less attention to publication, to quality. So are you still considering these whitelisted journal publishers as good publishers? So it's provocative. I understand that it's a provocative question. You can omit that question.
No, I'm still wondering what to do with these things, because I have been like part of some open access publishing on the editorial board who follow ethical practices. They lay a lot of emphasis on the methods of a manuscript. But they're also, the only big difference I see is that the results, even negative results, they don't shy away from publishing them. And their acceptance rates are close to around 50%, which is much higher than most of the other journals, which are not pure open access. So clearly something is different in the way they operate, and the central, you know, the driving incentive is financial, but then if the methodology of a patient manuscript is flawless, all the ethics are followed, then not all of the gold open access would be predatory. So clearly a checklist of ethical practices needs to be followed, and we need to reach maybe a shared decision based on your colleagues and going through the practices in the archives of a journal. And I also feel things may be dynamic, like Frontiers has been blacklisted in the past. Now we may need to reassess what it is like. Like I get emails from Sage Publishing Group every day, almost like 2 to 3 emails. And we don't know, like Lupus by Sage is pretty much, I think it is considered to be a good journal. So these are gray areas which I think need a lot of digging sometimes. But when in doubt, it's better to refrain from associating with these journals, particularly when you're young and early in your career. It's definitely a no-no.
Dear Latika, dear Armand, we have one comment from Dr. Velikova from Bulgaria. Some of the just mentioned journals provide invitations for publishing without publication fee and after rigorous peer review. Could you comment on this? Yes.
Latika?
So yes, this is something which I have encountered as well, and I think I'll let Dr. Gasparian take this question. I'm myself like in a fix sometimes and asking you for guidance on these, because I think we're seeing a sudden surge in these kind of invitations in the post-pandemic and peri-pandemic period. It's almost, I don't know if it was that common before, but
I understand. Yeah,
it is
some of these
publishers,
open access publishers, are in crisis, and their publication fees are high, so they struggle to to attract a lot of authors. Sometimes, from time to time, predatory open access publishers, they announce free publication, but they publish limited number of articles for free, and the rest is with high publication fees. So that's also something that it's like stick. So we should be very careful. And of course, it's better to publish in local small journals, platinum open access journals, like Croatian Medical Journal, like Indian Medical Research, Medical Science Journal, Indian Medical Research Journal. These are our national Indian journal. These are good journals. But most ambitious authors obsessed with American titles or European titles, and they abandon local journals, Indian, Ukrainian, instead of publishing good quality articles in good quality journals, local journals. They try to target these mega journals.
Well, Latika should attend other important meeting. Latika, thank you very much for your time, your experience that you shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dear Armand, would you like to introduce our next presentation?
Olena, I think that we should ask more questions. I see that Professor Konstantinovich is now active, and it's a rare occasion. So he is our friend and our best friend from Białystok, from Poland, professor of pediatric rheumatology, immunology, and who also helped us over these past years as a friend, as a cooperator, and he knows a lot about difficulties of publishing in good journals because he is a supervisor of PhD fellows. He himself is a head of pediatric rheumatology department, and we should ask him about his comments about predatory open access publishing in Eastern Europe.
Thank you, Armand. It's
Jurek, please join.
Thank you for this kind invitation. I didn't expect some comments because the time is very valuable. So let's save the time just briefly. Latika, congratulations. This was a perfect talk. Very funny sometimes regarding some details and some nuances regarding the spelling errors. And it's quite easy to recognize, in my opinion. Even young researchers could easily differentiate between good value, good ethical journals or publishers, or just fake journals, predatory, unusual or bizarre. However, just one comment. Look, please, if you look at the history of the BMC, Frontiers, or PLOS, or some MDPI publishing houses, there's been an evolution of the quality, and I'd like to just to emphasize, to highlight one important point. Let's not generalize the Frontiers as a family. We all know it's something special in some specific issues, like Frontiers in immunology are highly ranked. Doesn't mean this is the best journal in immunology, in my opinion. The tradition, continuity, when was a given journal established, plays a critical role, because the tradition makes the culture, the specific culture of publishing, which influences strongly the ethics or ethical issues. So it's mutual interaction between publishers, reviewers, authors, editors, and contributors, authors. So you deserve a good journal, so you deserve good reviewers and editors. I'm going to share with you perhaps the next time my own very short presentation, which is actually a joke or a cabaret about the unusual journal. I didn't expect the funny titles would become a reality in the modern times. I started to make the funny list some 10 years ago. I will show you perhaps in the next time. I will consult this first with Armand. No, back to the main point. So the family of journals doesn't mean all of them are bad or poor quality, not always. Some good authors incidentally get some unusual journals. This is not necessarily a mistake. However, I strongly support Armand's opinion that local journals, very established, stable, are much better, and they deserve disseminating local observation, good ideas, not just being eager for American titles only. So just that's what Jeffrey Bill's views are emphasizing. The local communities or regional journals are also important, because science and research are democratic. The democracy is a prevalent feature of the contemporary science. We all have got access to the internet. Imagine 30 years ago the world without internet, and there would haven't been predatory journals. Well, just 3 reflections. I don't want to steal your time. However, local, and what's important, just it's a crucial thing. It's a principle thing. What we are discussing now, it relates to humans. So any errors, any unethical behavior might reflect the risk of human health. That's why we discuss. No other discipline or life area is as critical and important as biomedical journals, health journals. Same relates to pandemic today. Exactly the same. 95 or maybe 92% of the journals might be considered substandard. I'm not sure what is your opinion about that, but just few reflections only. Thanks. Дякую, Olena.
Professor Konstantinovich, thank you very much for your comment. You are right, exactly. We should be very careful when we talk about predatory journals and predatory publishers. Some good journals, reliable journals, also may behave like predatory publishers, predatory journals, even subscription journals. Of course, Jeffrey Bill blacklisted only open access journals, substandard journals, but there are also many subscription journals in Eastern Europe, particularly in Eastern Europe, which these journals publish substandard articles with or without charging. And we know even about, in our field, in rheumatology, there are also old-styled, old-fashioned or traditional established subscription journals that behave like predators. They publish a lot, questionable articles without proper peer review, charge a lot, page charges and something like that, just to gain profit. But we should clearly distinguish good articles from bad articles. In so-called predatory publishers like MDPI, there are many good journals like Publications. I value high that journal, though it's published by initially borderline publisher. Frontiers also, they publish a lot, but the problem is that these publishers charge a lot, several thousands of dollars, and these publishers are non-reachable for most Eastern European scholars. So bigger scale of public predatory publishing exists, and in journals with small publication fees. I mentioned about Asia Pacific Journal of Cancer Prevention. It was initially it was delisted by journal citation reports because of publishing a lot for small amount of money, just $200. They published a lot, hundreds of articles without peer review, without proper digitization, and they were spotted by Web of Science, by Thomson Reuters. So we should clearly distinguish good articles from bad articles. good publishers from bad publishers, and be very flexible when we deal with so-called blacklist. Latika Gupta mentioned about Cable's service, predatory blacklisted journals. Of course, in 2017, Jeffrey Bill collaborated with Cable's, and they changed initial blacklist, developed something new. But the problem with Cable's list is that that list is behind subscription paywall, so not publicly accessible. Whereas Jeffrey Bill's list is still publicly accessible, though non-defunct. So we should be very careful when we deal with good and bad journals, good and bad authors. Predatory publishers and predatory agencies are still active. They target naive, inexperienced authors. They involve ambitious or inexperienced authors and experts in their editorial boards, damage their reputation, damage reputation of Pablons, of ORCID platform. You probably know that ORCID platform is populated by non-existent Chinese or other authors. Pablons is again populated or contains a lot of information about predatory journals which are listed next to Web of Science index journals. So even good platforms like ORCID and Pablons may be populated by bad publishers, bad journals. So thank you for your attention. Thank you, Jurek, for your comment and your involvement in our webinar. My greetings and gratitude to all Polish scholars in Bialystok, in Warsaw, and other cities.
Yeah, Jurek, thank you very much. I hope to see you soon. Face to face, yes, not only in Zoom.
I do also hope. Sorry, not the whole group from Poland, from my city, could be well organized because most of them were just forced to move to the COVID units to help patients. So apologies, and I invited many of them. Maybe Lublin is also here, the Viola Opolka-Winiarska, haven't seen her. However, be assured we are all aware of the good job you are still doing for the publishing ethics and the good pathway of the future. It's very important to organize and to make the clean situation in this area.
For our
thank you.
Authors.
Let's move on, I think, with the program, with the schedule.
Yeah, thank you. So our next speaker is Jeffrey Bilsa. I know him well. I met him in person in 2015. He's a nice chap, a very friendly guy, and he is concerned with the situation of publishing in Eastern Europe, Central Asia. He himself visited Almaty, Kazakhstan, and he also knows a lot about problems of publishing journals in Kazakhstan, in Eastern Europe. I invited him to contribute to a few journals, and last invitation was accepted by Jeffrey Bill. He published his opinion piece about persistent problems of predatory publishing in. You saw that opinion piece. His main point was to publish good journals with strong focus in a specific field, geography, and avoid gold open access model. That's message to emerging scientific powers in Central Asia and Eastern Europe. So Olena, after this introduction, you may now run video of next presentation.
Dear colleagues, it's a big pleasure and honor to introduce Jeffrey Bill, a big name in library and information science, an expert librarian from Denver, Colorado, who coined the predatory publishing term and set the criteria of blacklisting of predatory, unethical, open access journals. Jeffrey, please feel free to share with us your thoughts on open access and advise our non-Anglophone authors how to avoid falling prey to predatory journals and publishers, damaging reputation and affecting science growth, especially in non-mainstream science countries. You can share with us your presentation.
Sure. Thank you very much, Juliana, and thank you, Armand. As you can see, I have a very minute here, so we'll go ahead and get started. There we go. I like to always use this journal as an example when I give talks about predatory publishers. And as you can see, the title is International Journal of Advanced Research in Science, Engineering, and Technology. And I want to point out some of the things we can see from this screenshot of the journal's website. First of all, the title. The title is very broad in scope and covers a lot of, sorry, I was having some trouble there with the dialog box. The journal is broad in scope and tries to attract as many researchers as possible because it includes science, engineering, and technology. So that's a very broad area. Next, we see, it keeps asking me, I don't know if you can see that dialog box. Next, we can see on the right that the journal advertises that it has an impact factor of 6.646, and this is completely false. The journal does not have an impact factor at all. It's giving this false advertising in order to attract researchers who need to publish in impact factor journals. At the top, we see that the journal uses a Gmail address for its email address, which may possibly indicate that it's not a very professional operation, that it's just somebody operating a journal out of the spare bedroom in their house. Worst of all, on the left hand, we see where it says recent news, call for papers, and I want to, in the next slide, magnify that section of the journal's website. There we go. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble here. As you can see, it says call for papers, and this is this version of the screenshot that I took yesterday on April 1st, actually, as this is recorded. And it says call for papers, volume 8, issue 4, April 2021, which is this month. Paper submission, 25th of April 2021. Author notification within 3 days. And journal publication, April 30th, 2021. So this is very strong evidence that this is a predatory journal because their peer review process is, taking a maximum of 3 days, which is not enough time to do an honest peer review. So all of these things together, the broad scope, the fast peer review, the use of a Gmail address, and the super fast turnaround times are indications that this is a predatory journal and researchers should be skeptical of it. Now here's another publisher. This time we're jumping from a journal to a publisher. This is a predatory publisher called Science Publishing Group. And I've been following this publisher since 2012 when it first launched with about 50 journals. It now has over 300 journals covering pretty much every scientific field, and in addition, it has journals in the humanities as well. So if you look at this journal's website, I don't have it here on the screen. If you look at the Contact Us page for this journal, it says that it's published in Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. And Rockefeller Plaza is a very prestigious skyscraper in New York City where many top corporations have their offices. And it says that it occupies an entire floor of that building. And this is completely false. In fact, the journal is really based in Pakistan, so it's providing false information. Another thing I notice here on the website is that it says propose a special issue. Many of the predatory publishers use this strategy to get authors to basically do their work for them. They make you the guest editor of a journal issue, a special issue, and then you get your friends and colleagues to submit articles, and you basically serve as an agent for them, and they make money from all of the papers that your friends submit. So if you ever get an email, a spam email that invites you to be a guest issue, or if you see something like guest issue or special issue displayed prominently on a publisher's website, I recommend that you be very suspicious of that, because in more respected journals, they do have special issues, but generally the editor will privately invite a person who's a specialist in a field, to a particular narrow scope of the field, to do those special issues. Now here's another publisher that I want to talk about, and this publisher has been very successful at tricking people. It's a very dishonest publisher. As you can see, the name of the publisher is American Research Institute for Policy Development. And I have to admit, it has an excellent website. We use the word slick in English to describe a website like this. It's very nicely done. But overall, this is a very dishonest website. It's not an institute at all. And many predatory publishers will use the term institute or association in the name of the publisher in order to make themselves look legitimate. This publisher, I forget the exact number of journals that it has, but I think it's a couple hundred. And as you can see, they're in many subjects there. It has nice pictures. It looks inviting, but it's a dangerous, very dangerous publisher. It claims to be based, unfortunately, in my country, in the United States, but it's really based in Pakistan, the same as the previous publisher that we looked at. And a lot of people have been fooled by this journal, and they submit their papers, and the papers are published almost immediately. There's no real peer review that's done, or if it is, they use the same peer review for every paper. And then a lot of times people will become suspicious because their paper is published so fast. And then they realize that it's a predatory publisher. And that's when I, in the past, would receive emails from these people who were worried because they had just published with a predatory publisher. And they would often ask the publisher to remove the paper, but the publisher would refuse to remove the paper because they want to keep good papers in their journals, because those papers attract additional submissions and make the publisher look successful because it has more papers published in its journals. So here are some of the main characteristics of predatory journals and publishers. They use the gold or author pays open access model. As you know, they use spam to solicit article submissions. They possibly will also send you spam email to ask you to serve on their editorial boards, which very little work to be done there. And they may even ask you to do an ad hoc peer review for them. Predatory publishers, as I said, often pretend to be associations or institutes or academies. They do a fake or low quality or pretend peer review. they're not transparent, and they use deception, as we just saw, and they don't follow scholarly publishing industry standards. So these are the main characteristics. You probably know predatory publishers and predatory journals from the spam email that they send, and this is one that I received in February this year. I still have, I'm retired, but I still use my university email address. So one unfortunate part of that is that I still get lots of spam emails. Once you publish some papers, they learn your email address, so because some publishers include the email address on the actual published papers, so they harvest those email addresses. There's even companies that will do that and sell, for example, 5,000 email addresses to a publisher. So this one is from a publisher called Sunchrist Journal of Internal Medicine and Geriatric Research. Now, unlike Armand, I have no background in medicine, so I'm completely unqualified to publish in this journal, but they sent it to me anyway. And also at the bottom, it says, "Best regards, Daniel Roberts." So it's a very common first name and a very common surname in English, and that tells me that it's probably a fake name and a completely made up name. So now I'd like to look at the website for this journal about geriatric research. And this is it. First of all, this publisher was not on my list because it appeared after I stopped publishing my list in 2017. And so I think that this publisher is actually published by Omics International in India. That's my opinion. I don't have any direct evidence of that, but Omics has a very bad reputation. If you look at its Wikipedia article, even Wikipedia declares that it's a predatory publisher. And so to get around the negative publicity, what they've done is they have created numerous brands, separate brands of publishing houses, and I think that Sunchrist is one of those. Now, the term Sunchrist doesn't make sense in English. It's not a word. It sounds like, to me, it's like something they made up. There is a word called sun-kissed, like the past tense of the verb to kiss, but that's the name of a company that sells oranges. It's actually an agricultural crop, but cooperative. And it sounds like that, but there's no association between that and this. And so this publisher is busy spamming, and it has a whole bunch of medical journals, and predatory publishers like to focus on medicine because they know that medical researchers often have grant money to do research, and they can use that grant money to pay the author fees. So that's why they are especially targeted. Now, this slide is in Spanish, and it's brand new, and it's produced by a friend of mine, Dr. Rafael Repiso, who's in Spain. And so I want to translate some of this to you because I think it's really important. And he gave me permission to use the slide. The title in red at the top in English would be "The Enemy Has Entered the Door," or has passed through the door. And under that it says, "The few predatory journals that have been able to enter into Web of Science or Scopus tend to become mega journals or mega predators." Then in the bullet points, he says, these journals drastically increase their author fees, their APCs, after they get indexed in these two indexes. Next, they also drastically increase the number of articles that they publish. Next, he says they multiply the special issues as a way to grow. So they might have like volume 5, issue 1, and then they'll have volume 5, issue 1, special number 1, special number 2, special number 3, and each of those is a new issue of the journal. They fire, or in British English, sack the editorial committee, the editorial board, the original one if they don't agree with increasing the number of accepted articles. And next he says they reinvest part of the benefits in order to pay famous researchers to be associated with the journal. And finally, at the last bullet point, he says they publish multidisciplinary articles on any subject, even though the subject is not connected to the focus of the journal. And I love this picture that he uses of a shark eating what looks like an oil tanker with Web of Science on it. Now, lots of people have used sharks and wolves to illustrate articles about predatory publishers. So he's really inventing a new term here, mega predators. And again, that's for predatory journals that have managed to get inside, to get indexed in either Web of Science or Scopus or maybe other large indexes that people use. So the reason that predatory publishers are a problem is that they damage science and damage research. And I think there's a lot more research misconduct being published now because of predatory publishers, including plagiarism. A lot of people use predatory publishers to publish pseudoscience, and then the pseudoscience gets indexed in Google Scholar and other academic indexes. They threaten demarcation, which is the division between science and pseudoscience. And as you know, new research is based on existing research that's already published. And when you publish pseudoscience, you are polluting science. We know demarcation because we know about the difference between astronomy and astrology. Astrology is a pseudoscience, but astronomy is an authentic science. And so we need to maintain that distinction between the two. But in some fields, I think because of predatory publishers, that's not happening, or the borderline between the borderline between pseudoscience and authentic science is, in many cases, it's not very clear anymore. They also feed bogus research to societal institutions that depend on authentic science, like journalism, medicine, research. Medical research is translated into clinical medicine in the clinic, and sometimes in courts they use science to help decide a case. And government policy is often all based on published research. They also publish activist science and conspiracy theory science, especially the articles that the authentic journals with a real peer review refuse to publish. There's always a place to publish junk science in a predatory journal. They're also polluting taxonomy, which is the naming of plant and animal species, and it's based on published articles. Many also sponsor bogus scholarly conferences, which hasn't been a big problem in the last year because most have been canceled. Pharmaceutical entrepreneurs use predatory publishers to make their new drugs appear efficacious. They publish bogus studies saying that the drug is effective. And author fees, finally, may prevent some authors from being able to publish work, especially in middle-income countries and for unaffiliated researchers. So a second ago, I talked about scientists creating new drugs and then using predatory journals to show that they're efficacious. So this is an example of that. There was a drug that was popular a few years ago called GCMAF. It was especially popular in Europe, actually. And the researchers, a team of researchers from Italy, this is in about 2013, I think, published their research in the American Journal of Immunology, as you can see on the right. And that journal is from a predatory publisher called Science Publications. It has a great name, but it's a horrible publisher. If you ever have a suspicious journal and it has the word American or British in the title, then you should be more suspicious. And that's also a guarantee that it's not published in America or in Britain. Here's another example, and this is a recent example, as you can see, because it's about COVID-19, and it was published in a journal called Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, and it's from a publisher called SciVision, and this is another publisher that was, I don't think it was on my list because it appeared after I stopped publishing my list in 2017, and it may be another one of those brands from Omics International in India. And here the author is trying to scare people about the vaccines. And he's saying you could get prion disease from getting the vaccines. And there's a lot of anti-vaccine people, and they often use predatory publishers to publish their anti-vaccine research. So this is another example of that, trying to scare people into not getting the vaccines. So this is my last slide, and I like to end on this note by the Swedish philosopher S.O. Hansen, and he says, since science is our most reliable source of knowledge in a wide variety of areas, we need to distinguish scientific knowledge from its lookalikes. And predatory publishers are publishing a lot of lookalike science. So thank you for this opportunity to share this information about predatory publishers. I'll turn it over to Armand.
Jeffrey, thank you very much. It's, as usual, brilliant talk, informative and useful for our, particularly for our non-Anglophone fellows or authors who are going to publish in English journals, in journals with impressive names like
Jeffrey,
American,
you can start share your video with us because we cannot see you.
Oh.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So I'm sure that today's talk will be useful to our participants, and not just in Eastern Europe, but also in Central Asia and many other countries. And also, there are many points in this presentation useful to journal editors who are going to submit their applications to Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, and probably to PubMed Central. Thanks a lot, Jeffrey. I hope that we'll continue our cooperation regardless of your current retirement. You are still active, and we still read, cite, and comment on your articles on social media. Thank you very much. Thanks for your support to our participants and to emerging science countries, because non-mainstream science countries particularly vulnerable to predatory publishers, and your research, your publications are of prime interest to our unaware journal editors and publishers in non-Anglophone countries. Thank you very much, Jeffrey.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, any comments, any questions? Olena, we should ask our one of the best experts in ethics, Professor Vasil Lanchina from Chicago. Is he somewhere?
You know,
Oh.
I'm running between two meetings back and forth. So I'm sorry, I missed the last hour or so because I was at a different ethics seminar from Chicago.
Did you miss Jeffrey Beal's talk?
I did, unfortunately. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
You may watch later on.
Exactly.
So, Vasil, as an expert in bioethics, how you evaluate the weight of all predatory publishers in US and the rest of the world? Predatory publishers and their weight. Is it so important? Is it a global issue?
Oh, I think it is absolutely a global issue. You know, with the internet nowadays, I mean, I get letters, unsolicited letters, to participate, to be on an editorial board, to write, you know, to go to meetings and all this. to present at meetings. I mean, in fields that are not even mine. So it's rampant. I don't know how they, it's like the robocalls, the various calls you get that I just ignore now all the time. Yeah, so I think this is a product of the 21st century, is that because of global communication, we are subjected to that, and people take advantage of the situation. And, it's like everything else. These are scams. And one needs to be able to smell them out and know which one are not appropriate, and to discard them, and not go that way. And I can see where perhaps young researchers, young physicians, and maybe even seasoned ones that maybe have lost some of that drive, but still want to be in the forefront, and therefore take the easy road, because it's an easy road, isn't it? Any paper that is presented has to really be worked very well, edited, re-edited, rewritten many times, not once or twice, but many times, and must be subjected to peer review, because without the opinion of experts, without the opinion of other colleagues, I mean, you can write anything you want. You can publish it nowadays, and it's meaningless. So if one is interested in simply padding your CV with a whole bunch of publications or publications that are duplicated, I've seen this also, where you take the same publication and you change a phrase, or you change what you're looking at, but it's basically the same thing, and you duplicate it and publish it here and there. Yeah, you have a very impressive CV, and when they write your obituary, they wrote more than 1,000 papers. Well, my goodness, if you wrote 1,000 papers, what else were you doing? That's the way I look at it. So
is more.
Yeah, so I think we we need to look at what we're doing. I mean, why do we publish? We publish to foster knowledge, to disseminate knowledge. And if you're doing it for that reason, then you will go the right path. But if you're doing it simply because you want to progress in your job, or have prestige, and have people think that you're smart, then yeah, you'll take the easy road and just this this unnecessary and very easily obtained accolades, because you're able to publish so many things. And unfortunately, probably there are those institutions that press people so much, and you can't you may not have the time, that you take the easy road in order just to maintain your own status at your university, and that's unfortunate. So yeah, I think from the standpoint of ethics, I mean, we have to come down to earth and say, why are we doing this? Why are we publishing? And proceed with looking for truth. And if you're looking for truth, you're not going to take the easy road. So that's.
Yeah, exactly. So novice or non-Anglophone authors, journal editors should be very careful with what they publish, number of articles, special issues. So Jeffrey Bill warned us all to be very careful with invitations, with special issues, particularly if there are publication fees incurred. So these type of publishing practices always border with predatory behavior, predatory publishing, and we should inform our journal editors in Central Asia, Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, there are also many agencies, predatory commercial agencies, working in Eastern Europe, trying to rectify language, trying to translate and act as mediators, to even submitting articles on behalf of non-Anglophone authors, on behalf of Chinese and other novice authors, and experienced editors immediately pick these type of things and immediately outright reject these type of articles. But all these articles from commercial editing agencies end up in low-ranked journals like Ukrainian and other journals, and the journals are lose their indexability, lose chances of indexing by Scopus. So it's really global issue, and we should increase awareness of our authors, journal editors, reviewers. Reviewers should be also very careful with where they review and should resist these invitations to join editorial boards. If Nature, Science, or other top journals invite you to join, yeah, you can accept. But if an gold open access journal invites you to join and then sends invitation to submit your article, and then that follows with invoice to pay for that publication, it's of course predatory. So the problem is, of course, that problem of predatory open access publishing is important also for startup journals. Because of many reasons, many startup open access journals struggle to get covered by DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals, get indexed by Scopus, because Scopus experts are very suspicious of all open access journals, particularly gold open access journals, and reject or set embargo for this type of journals, 5-year embargo. Ukrainian journals, startup journals, should also know how to avoid being practiced as predatory journals and publishers. And they should try hard to increase indexability by learning more about ethical open access publishing. Again, I'd like to repeat Jeffrey Bill's point that journals with specific scope of interest, let's say in bioethics, not American Journal of Bioethics, Ukrainian Journal of Bioethics, or Eastern European Journal of Bioethics, with specific scope of professional interests, specific geography, and specific audience, they may persist, get indexed, and survive. It's quite difficult to survive in the times of COVID-19 pandemic, because research reports are good quality research reports are in small numbers. Most journals compete to publish good quality research, and journals also need funding to publish this type of research. This is why the best model in the time of pandemic is platinum open access model. If journal editors wish to get indexed by databases or archives, they need funding from their universities, their sponsors, to cover publishing, editing, and archiving services. So hopefully there will be more and more Ukrainian and Central Asian journals, Polish journals with no author fee publication model. Jeffrey Bill rightly criticized gold open access, and his critique is mainly important, is particularly important for non-Anglophone countries in Eastern Europe, in Central Asia. No fees, platinum or diamond open access model is the best option, the best model in the time of pandemic, in the time of crisis, in the time of limited research funding and limited opportunities for publishing. So, Olena, any other comments?
Yes, we have one comment from Dr. Velikova. I think that there is a gray zone with journals that are between the established reputable journals and the predatory ones. And there are even examples of Elsevier journals that provide only open access with extremely high article publication charge, as well as emerging journals with clear peer review process without any publication fee. Yes, and she has one question. Is there a minimum of checks, red flags, the established criteria to consider a journal as a predatory journal?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Velikova from Bulgaria. It's an important point. So, of course, there are many journals from good, excellent, or established publishers behaving like predatory publishers, or publishing for money, pseudoscientific hypotheses, pseudoscientific research reports. So this is why good journal editors or experienced journal editors should try their best to distinguish science from pseudoscience and publish for payment or no payment, for high publication prices or no publication prices, only good quality research. Of course, there are publishers charging up to $10,000 for open access publishing. And there are also authors who are able to pay these high publication prices because of their grant funders. Developed countries include the publication charges in the research funding budget, whereas in non-Anglophone, in Eastern European, Central Asian countries, this is a huge issue because there are no funding for these type of publication prices. So what's the main point? Main point is to publish in local journals, platinum open access journals. If you have good quality research, it's better to publish in Bulgarian, Croatian, Ukrainian, Kazakhstani journal and benefit from increased visibility offered by these local journals. Whereas if you have poor quality article or not suitable for big journals and you submit and pay $10,000, and everyone knows that these type of articles are published without considering targeting criteria, targeting rule. So good authors should know how to target journals and how to increase visibility of their small or good quality research. My point is it's better to target small journals, open access journals, platinum open access journals in Croatia, Bulgaria, in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and know how to promote using social media, using archiving options, or authors should also know if they publish in small local journals, they should pay attention, should evaluate journal profile, journal platform, whether there are options for permanent archiving. I presented an example of local Kazakhstani journal, which is published by local university, Kazakhstani university, sponsored by that university, no payments for authors, and that journal is permanently archived from issue number 1, volume number 1. But there are many journals from predatory publishers that charge a lot, or even smaller, from $200 to $2,000 without permanently archiving. The same story happened to Asian Pacific Journal of Cancer Prevention, which was asked to permanently archive, preserve published contents, and at that point they were unable to find XML agent to preserve content and archive by PubMed Central. So all Eastern and Central European journal editors and publishers should be ready to preserve their published contents by archiving, by permanent archiving, reliable archiving repositories, by PubMed Central, logs, Portico, and other preservation services to have good service to their authors. And authors themselves should be skilled enough, and they should know where they publish, what they publish, and how they target journals. So hopefully I answered Velikola's question. Any other questions?
Thank you,
Comments?
Armand.
Olena, we have many participants from Bulgaria. We may ask them to join our
Conversation, yes.
Yeah, if they wish.
Yes.
I know that fellows from Varna, from Sofia are currently attending today's meeting. And I know that they also have their own problems with their own local journals, struggling with open access, with publishing. So today's webinar hopefully will be useful to them and will solve at least some problems. Taking this opportunity, I express my gratitude to all friends, fellows from Bulgaria who follow and attend our webinars, change something in their local journals, make their local journals attractive for Ukrainian, Polish, other fellows. They also try to internationalize their local journals without charging for publications, without becoming predatory publishers. So it's quite important to continue publishing, relying on platinum open access model. And chances of getting index good journals are high if you behave like normal ethical publisher without abusing your authors, without abusing gold open access model. Gold open access model is good for good publishers in good hands, but it's an enemy and it's a threat to non-Anglophone, non-mainstream science countries, because it opens gates for rubbish, pseudoscientific or non-evidence-based science. So we should be very careful, and we should try to increase awareness of ethical open access publishing. Comments?
Thank you, Armand. It seems that we have discussed all items of today's agenda, 3 hours marathon. And we hope that our participants will never publish their nice articles in predatory journals. And we wish you to publish your great articles only in ethical, well-established and high-rank or even local, yes, journals. Many thanks to all our speakers, to all our participants from Ukraine. Yes.
Olena, Professor Konstantinovich raised an important point.
Yes.
He mentioned in chat box that we should simply forget predatory publishers and get rid of that problem. That's also an option. But unfortunately, all these predatory publishers, agencies are still active in Eastern Europe, East and Central Asia. They cannot practice, they cannot work in Americas, in US. They target currently Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Kazakhstan. So we should discuss this issue up to the point to increase awareness of journal editors and ask our authors also to avoid publishing with predatory publishers. So was that right?
Yeah, I think so. You're right, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Armand.
Thank you, Jurek. Thank you, Professor Lonchina. So we'll continue our series of webinars and discuss other points, other issues as well, not just predatory publishing, but also other open access tools, how to publish in good journals. Thank you to our mentors, to our supporters. My cordial gratitude to Jeffrey Bill, to Professor Vasil Lanchina, to Professor Jerzy Konstantinovich, fellows from Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, my good friends from Aktobe, Kazakhstan, my friends from Varna, Olena. We also have today participants from Almaty. We are open to all your suggestions, and we are ready to help you raise profile of your local journals. And for that, we also offer you membership in the Ukrainian Council of Science Editors. That local association is open to all Eastern European, Central Asian journal editors, research fellows, scientists who are interested in information science, library, journalology, health informatics, and health journalism. Not just health journalism, because we are going to have an association open to all science editors from all language backgrounds and professional interests. Thank you very much to all our participants, supporters. Thank you, Olena, for your service to this webinar service. And hopefully we'll have a next webinar soon, and we'll have more participants from all Eastern European, Central Asian
Yes,
countries.
Thank you very much to Danilo Halitsky, Lviv National Medical University, Shevchenko Scientific Society for organizing of today webinar. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. See you soon on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.